There it is. All right. Well, welcome back to another MVP Office Hours. It's great to see all of you on this beautiful June 10th. I am Squire Kirshner. Joining me as always, is Dale Ziegler. Joy is traveling home from Connections, and so she probably won't join us, but she said if she gets home in time, she would. We're all available on Twitter and through the MVP Office Hours Gmail account, but always think first with the success community for any questions you have. We're all real smart and we're all real willing to help. So don't feel like the three of us are the only resources you have. Our next call will be the 24th, as we mentioned at the last meeting, because of the 5 Friday June and some oddities with the Salesforce Live schedule. We're going to be on the 2nd and 4th of June and the 2nd and 4th Friday of July for similar reasons, holidays and 5 Fridays. But normally we're on the 1st and 3rd. The bit.ly link is there if you need to register or you want to pass it along to anyone who you think would benefit from joining us. We love having old and new members join. Welcome to everyone, and please remember you're all welcome to participate, whether you've got questions, insight, comments, links, recommendations. They're all valuable and they all help us all through the conversation. So make sure that you're posting those links or those resources in the chat and responses to the question in general if you want. That's all real valuable. If you do have a question, feel free to raise your hand or post your question in the chat. We'll monitor and try to keep track of everyone as best we can. In the meantime, please stay on mute unless you're speaking. And as a reminder, as you just saw when it kicked in, we are recording the call, which means two things. If you can't be recorded, then I'm sorry, we have to ask you to drop. And if you want to share something on screen, really great way to demonstrate what you're trying to explain. Make sure that it's not private or proprietary information. We can't edit it out. So keep it safe, keep it in a sandbox, make sure we're all secure in what we're doing. So. Community events. London's Calling is happening right now. I believe there's virtual events today and tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. So feel free to jump in. You're Dreaming, Southeast Dreaming, and Dreaming in Color are all coming up in June. And of course, then June World Tour in London. Salesforce World Tour in London and in New York is coming up shortly. And I wanted to throw out the Dreamforce date for two reasons. One, because we should all start planning to try to make that trip, but also calls for presenters, I think, went out yesterday or the day before, if I'm not mistaken. So if you've got a presentation that you'd like to deliver, write up a synopsis, drop it in there, and we might get a chance to see you in live. And with that, we'll jump right in. I only saw one post since our last meeting in Success, and it was from Diane when I saw her join. It had some questions about these protection settings for Mac users. Diane, do you want to go into some detail there?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So I had a user come to me and say that he couldn't download files. And after doing research, I realized that I saw an article that said if you enabled these two things, enable XSS protection and enable content sniffing protection, that they would be able to download files. But what I'm always afraid of with Salesforce is I never know what's going to happen if I do that. Like, is it going to affect another user who's not using Safari in some way? So anyway, there was someone that posted, you know, Safari really isn't the browser of choice for Salesforce. And I know that. And the guy that had come to me, I told him to switch browsers, and he did. The problem is that I've got a couple of C-levels who use Macs, and I just didn't want to have to tell them, you have to switch browsers. But I don't know that they're downloading files anyway. So I kind of just let this lie, and I decided that if they did approach me about having issues, that I would just explain to them that, you know, Safari is not the browser of choice and has limitations, and, you know, if they want to download files, they have to switch the browser. So I don't know if anybody else on the call has had experience with enable XSS protection and the content sniffing protection. I have no idea what that is.
Honestly, neither do I, but have you worked with your info security department to know what, if any, kind of enterprise level settings they might be pushing? Because just like with PCs and like Internet Explorer and Edge and everything, corporations love those products because they're easily coupled in with enterprise management. I would imagine Safari is the same for any company that's mass using Macs. Have you worked with them to ask if there's anything pushed to the local machines that might be conflicting with this?
No, I didn't. That's a great suggestion.
Beyond that, I don't really know what to tell you, but when you say multiple users are using the same machinery and same browser, my first instinct is always go to IS and IT.
Yeah, it's actually just one user that approached me, but I happen to know we don't have very many people using Macs in our organization. I don't even know how this person who approached me is using a Mac. Usually the C-levels, if they want a Mac, they're the only ones that get them. And I don't know that they're downloading it. Obviously, they're not downloading files. Otherwise, I'd probably hear that they couldn't do it. But so I think I'm all right. I mean, if the problem persists, I'll reach out to my IT department to ask about it. But I think for now, I'm just going to go with the approach. And I really did want to go with the approach of, hey, don't use that browser anymore, because there are limitations. You obviously, thank you for bringing up the screen, but there are some limitations when you're using Safari. And, that may be enough for them to just say, okay, we'll switch.
Well, and when you say that, I mean, you've only had the one user report it, is it a company issued Mac or is it a personal device?
I don't know. I didn't ask him.
Okay, because if it's a personal device, that's all bets off. You can't do anything. Like you should not have to go down the rabbit hole of fixing a problem someone's having on their own personal device. If it's company issued, then I stand by still go with IT, info security as a partner in crime on this one.
Yeah. I mean, I think if he would have given me grief about switching browsers, I would have just questioned him on the Mac, because honestly, I think it might be a personal device. I just don't know of anybody at his level getting Macs. But anyway, I think I'm good with this one.
Now, Diane, I do want to jump in here really quick just to make sure that you don't have to backtrack a little bit. So Salesforce as a company is a Mac house, and Safari is supported for the most part. Some of the known limitations are listed in the considerations in the documentation. None of them, in my experience, although I would also have to probably backtrack doing a little bit of research, have to do with file downloads. Sometimes that has things to do with firewalls. It has to do with browser specific settings for, within your shop. So don't stop the research there unless you're able to just kind of wave your hand and make them go to Chrome. But you might still have the same issue with Chrome, depending on what's blocking the file download.
Yeah, so far no issues with Chrome, just Safari.
All right.
But that's a good. I thought I did read though that Safari there were issues with file downloads on Safari.
So a lot of times it has to do with these settings here at the bottom. So and what they're usually saying is turn them off to work around those issues. And it's usually things like content and images and things like that. Most of these settings, so cross-site scripting and sniffing has a lot more to do with your Visualforce pages and how the page interacts with the Visualforce within the framework of your pages. So you could probably, again, I assume a lot, and I apologize, your IT team and if you've got developers, they could help you understand if there's anything in a Visualforce page that could be at risk for a cross-site scripting that's what I'm looking for, not limitation, but a risk. You could probably get some research there, and the reason I'm saying that is because that limitation or that issue could be an issue regardless of file download. So like cross-site scripting is site sniffing is a big deal in just info security in general. So having those on in enforcing the prevention of cross-site tracking and preventing sniffing is really valuable. So I wouldn't lose track of this as a to-do, maybe not for the file piece, but for just in general.
So do you have those two things turned on? Enabled XSS protection?
Yep.
You do? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Now we're not a Salesforce or we're not a Mac shop, so we're not bumping in any downloads. But this link here that I have in our slide deck opens up the HTTP header security information for Salesforce, which covers it in a little bit more, although very technical way to help understand what those settings are going to do and off what risks are there. I think it's probably two different issues. One is, what are the settings that make the most sense for your info security? And then separate, but coincidentally, how do you get these file downloads to work without having challenges? So.
Okay.
And if I jump in here, is this the link that you dropped in, Dale, or is this a separate link?
I found what you were showing. I shared. No, the header security, that was already there, I thought, from you. I then added what you were sharing a few minutes ago.
The link from the release notes.
Yeah, the Safari considerations.
Yep. So down here at the bottom, there's a nice little write-up on the sniffing controls, the cross-site scripting, attack controls, things like that. So this would be something that you could walk through with your info security if you need to keep focusing on it, Diane.
Yep. Perfect. Thank you.
You bet. And that's everything we had pre-call, Dale, unless you saw something I didn't.
I don't think I did. I do see Andrea's hand raised very patiently. No, that's the only thing I saw. So go for it.
Let's jump over to Andrea then. What have you got? You're on mute, I think, or your mic is off.
No, I was muted.
Cool.
It was one thing. I had to lower my hand and then unmute. So, okay. So we have a request to build out functionality that to me ends up feeling like omni-channel with like case routing, but it's not that because it is associating a lead with a contact record, because what we do in this case is we're pairing financial advisors with potential clients. And so it's our team owns the lead. And then we're going, okay, Joe advisor, you're going to, we're going to match you with this lead for Sally Sue. But we want to do it right now. We're doing it based on, and they want to automate it. That's the other thing. It's not just enough to, because if we weren't, wouldn't matter. But so we want to do it right now based on zip codes, but then want the potential for it to grow if we have other things like not load balancing, but load balancing, or making sure all the dollars don't go to one advisor, so on and so forth. And then we also would like it built out in a way so that not the Salesforce team has to manage those, like all of it. So my thought goes to some sort of flow with a custom object instead of a custom metadata type, because then an end user can't edit the custom metadata type. I just don't know. And then how to, I guess eventually if we have, okay, well, we have 5 advisors in the zip code, so now go to the next one. And I don't know if we're there yet, but that's a future state.
So is this dealing with when I'm kind of focusing on the load balancing part? Are you are you making a decision based on many records to determine what those loads are?
Well, so right now, the requirement right now is that we just automatically assign based on zip code. Like this advisor zip code is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So anything within, I'm guessing within a range of zip codes will get assigned to that person. Oh, okay. And so then if they're, what else? I'm just looking at the notes and the requirements. So interesting. Add geography as the initial criteria point, and also have the ability to add on additional criteria or assignment layers. So like I said, basically going, we don't want to give, we want to make sure that we're kind of sharing the love so that everything doesn't go to one person. So like, oh, you've already got a bazillion dollars that you're potentially going to make. Let's give the next one to this person. And I don't know that that's an immediate thing. I think right now we're just at a point where we need to build for scalability though. That's so right now I think it's just geography. And it's like, so given that an advisor's availability, location, or other information changes, the team that's managing all of that can update things versus, again, relying on the Salesforce team.
So you have a couple of votes there for territory management. I'm going to backstory myself here. Having actually done territory management within a sales operations organization that was not Salesforce, I know the zip code system way too well. It shoved out happy childhood memories to actually learn how it works. Does territory management actually take physical geography into consideration?
It can.
It can. Okay.
Okay.
Like,
but the
example
question well, here's a question I have on territory management. We're not, and because I haven't used it in this regard, can I associate, we're pulling in a contact value onto the lead. It's not going to assign a Salesforce user to it. I think that's where it gets fun. And also I think with territory management, if criteria changes, it's reliant on our team to change it. We can't give it to the end user other than editing a contact if they move zip codes.
Well, if you're not using user records to assign ownership and visibility to, like, if it's literally just sticking a record ID on a lead, then territory management's off the table.
Okay, that's
so that's what you're saying is like you just want to be able to say lead X came in, give it to Dale, but Dale's not actually a user.
Yeah. So right. So it's essentially we're playing matchmaker in this regard between a financial advisor who is our customer and then a investor who is their customer. So we're playing matchmaker. Like, this customer has some money they need to invest. Which financial advisor do we assign it to? And those advisors are just kept as contacts in Salesforce.
Yeah. So I would probably agree then also that territory management's probably out since you're not using users. Obviously, if you went with Salesforce Maps, that's going to be a very expensive paid thing, but it could probably definitely handle geography. Going back to the whole thing with zip codes is you can't necessarily count on a range because, like, I live in one of the southwest suburbs of Kansas City on the Kansas side. My zip code starts 660. I can go 5 minutes that way and I'm in the 662s. I got to shoot all the way north up to KCK to get to 661. And oh, hey, by the way, when you get over into Missouri, which is about 15 minutes that way, you're in the 640s. So the range is ranges are weird. So it's almost like you'd have to spell out every zip code if that's what you're keying off of.
That's my fear, is it's a slippery slope of like, okay, give me every zip code in the United States. And like how you would potentially, it just becomes it basically becomes a gnarly custom like maintenance is where I'm worried about it all.
Absolutely. And I would not put that in an object. I don't know if that would exceed the limits of custom metadata or again, so knowing how a zip code works, the first 3 digits are a quote unquote city or group of cities. And then the last 2 are just sequential 1 through 99 within that. So first ask the question, does it have to be down to a 5-digit zip code level, or can you live at a 3-digit postal region? That will reduce the amount of data that you need to manage there. If there's any kind of load balancing in there, as much fun as it would be to build a flow to do that, I would almost say keep it scalable and go with either DLRS or roll up helper or something that already has the, if you're taking sums of data to help with that load balancing, take a tool that's already doing the aggregation for you. Take that off your shoulders.
Yeah.
But then from there, it's like you really got to get into the nitty-gritty details of what you're trying to assign to who and why.
I'm a little concerned that, because I thought I heard you as you're describing that there's more than one criteria for these assignments. There
might be right now, based on the story that I have written and I'm going off of and researching. It's right now, it's geography. Yeah, I'd like to assign based on availability and location. I don't know how you factor in availability other than pulling in. Yeah, that I don't know how to do. At least not off the top of my head. And then, yeah, so they want to set up this infrastructure so we can add geography as an initial criteria point, but have the ability to add on additional layers in the future.
So what I'm concerned about is that if you don't start with a normalized table of what your assignment rules are, regardless of how you're going to make it link to the contact, you might paint yourself into a corner. So like for in my mind, I'm thinking like if you just had to do this manually and you wanted everybody to have access, you'd probably build a spreadsheet and you'd have columns that say this zip code gets Dale and this zip code gets Squire. And and there's multiple. So now you have to have this zip code multiple times and Squire and Dale and Andrea, right? So you have to like figure out that normalized table, because at the end of the day, the logic has to run off of something. So if you can build the table that decides how you want to assign, even as an example of it, it's 100 or something. Then the next thing is like, okay, well then how does the lead know which one of these to put on it? Because if you build the table, then you could build an object to store them and then someone can manage it, right?
Right.
And then in theory, you could have a flow or whatever. I don't want to think about the solution yet. But what gets really interesting. So we had to do this. I used to work for a company that helped with energy rebating through the US. So we had to like bring in energy billing information from all over the United States. And then based on certain criteria, assign these accounts to people. And so not only did we have to say, well, what are the rules that will work every time? But then the worst part of it was if the rule can hit me and Andrea and Dale at the same time, how do I know who to give it to? So then we had to write a piece into it. And we had to do all this in Apex because Flow wasn't very good 15 years ago. That you had to say, okay, these three people could get it. Who got the last one? Or actually, who was the last person to get one? Give it to that person and then move them up in the list. So you have to like keep managing like their prioritization.
Build like a round robin. Yeah, we have that on one object because so I pulled up more stuff that I found.
Yeah.
Apparently we're using a distribution engine, which essentially gives the territory tag. So and I think they can put lots of criteria in it. So that is geography based.
I'm wondering,
and so that would get us
field service engine to do this. You're not really assigning field service, but you could assign someone to a queue based on rules. Does that do that? Right? Because like you can prioritize for lots of reasons, whether it's availability or region or whatever. You might be able to sneak up on it with a backdoor field service tool.
I don't know what the appetite is for any of that. I'm trying to look for other notes. For territories with multiple advisors, we can have those leads routed to a queue. So if there are multiple, like again, that example, if we're all in the same area, then eventually they want to potentially like round robin it. But for now, it would just go into a queue, and then that would be manually assigned.
But the same problem, right? So are the criteria such there's actually multiple queues that don't align? Like Q1 has Dale and I, Q2 has you and Dale, and the rules could hit either one of our queues. You have the same problem.
Well, right. I think, well, when I say goes to a queue, I mean, it would go into, instead of being assigned to a contact, it would go to like an ops team that works with that group, internally ops team, like, okay, basically, we can't do this automatically. You figure it out manually and then assign it. So.
I mean, I hate to say it, but I think you're probably going to have to introduce a paid solution of some type to help with this. I don't think you can just flow your way through it.
Yeah, I mean, I've got developers and stuff. We've got that do all sorts of stuff, but I think they may have, I don't know what their level of priority for anything like this would be.
Even if you have the most awesome developers, though, this feels like such a big process and a big weighty thing that you need the insurance policy that comes with a paid tool.
Yeah, because I mean, like I said, it's essentially rebuilding omni-channel routing, but with leads and to a contact instead of.
Sorry,
right.
You can't use the word just in that statement.
Yeah, no, that's
rebuilding
a tool.
But not the tool is way bigger than just.
Oh, I know. It's not a just. I mean, that's all it is. Just rebuild this whole engine.
I was wondering how long it would take for Dale to get to that answer. In a former life, we were trying to do a very similar story with a membership organization that was trying to track legislative districts and reach your representative via your zip code for a specific topic. You could say gun control, for example. And we were trying to do it all inside of Salesforce and spent months and months trying to figure out how to do it, and just came to the conclusion that no, some things you cannot do in Salesforce, or you shouldn't. You could do it in Salesforce, but you probably should not do it in Salesforce. And there are tools out there that are non-Salesforce that can get that information for you. And through API magic, you could get that data just brought back into the contact. This might be one of them.
Yeah, because the reason I said paid tools and potentially other tools, I mean, probably similar to what Stu was talking about, again, in my former life, didn't have Salesforce, but as I was managing territory loads for sales across the whole country, it was a mix of Access connected to an ODBC database that had all of the accounts, all of the sales, the revenues, all of that, and Microsoft MapPoint that actually let you visualize where each zip code was, to be able to say this zip code is going to go to Dale plus this zip code plus this zip code, because it was all Microsoft. That sends it back out to go reaggregate the numbers and do the load balancing. That's why I mentioned like Salesforce Maps. I don't know if it would have any kind of an assignment layer to it that would at least help supplement any zip code data, or contact has however much stuff or whatever, but it's not, I don't foresee this getting all done with just Salesforce.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking, and as we talk, I'm looking through, there's more documentation, like, oh, there's actually more requirements information. I guess right now is distribution engine is doing a lot of the territory, is doing the territory management, and is assigning, it assigns that territory in distribution engine will be assigned based on zip codes in that. So it's possible that this might actually be easier than I thought it was for the initial go around, where it's like, if this is your, basically on the contact, just list their territory field, and then it's a simple, yes, it's a simple flow. It's the scalability for load balancing or round robining that gets to be more of an adventure. But I believe we're round robining a different object. I couldn't tell you which one. So that functionality, that basis may be there, that kind of just copy and paste it for leads eventually. So, but it's a lot of food for thought, and I appreciate it. I knew it wasn't going to be like a quick fix.
Never is, right?
No, that was not requirements like that. That's why I saved it for all. I didn't save it actually. I only got assigned it yesterday, so we just have good timing.
All right.
So I appreciate the information.
Let us know where you end up, because I'm sure we'll have a question like this again someday. So
yeah. Thank you.
Erin, you're up.
Hey, everyone. Speaking of omni-channel, we have omni-channel chat, and the automated process creates contacts and they're missing fields. They're actually bypassing the required fields. So I was curious, has anyone switched out the automated process quasi-user for an actual end user? Yeah, I've read where it can be done, but I'd like to speak to somebody who has switched it out, and that way I could see, ramifications, because the automated process, as you know, it's really not a user. It's a user that Salesforce has, and it's a big part of omni-channel, but it's very limited. Even in flows, you create it where basically what I was trying to do was just create a flow that said, okay, if the contact is created by the automated process, then just assign the contact to this account and these default fields. But in flow, it's created by ID. The automated process doesn't have an ID because it's actually not a real user.
So what's stored in the column of the data as created by?
It says automated process, but it's text.
No, on the back end of the data.
Yeah, like I know, yeah, it displays that way, but underneath the covers, it should only store an ID value. I'm wondering what it looks like.
Honestly, I don't know, but I honestly want to get rid of it and switch it out. We have end users that are system users for integration or whatever.
When you say get rid of it, meaning like you want it to be created by something else entirely?
Exactly. So when somebody goes to our website, right, and submits a chat, it creates a case and it creates a contact associated to that case. But it does not assign that contact to an account. It actually leaves it blank. Right? And we have a couple of required fields, like a lead source. Our marketing department depends heavily on lead source. That's a required field. That's blank as well. So it's really creating bad data. So I've gone into the back of the pre-chat forms, and so I went to the case and I went to the contact on the pre-chat forms, and you don't even have account as an option for the field. I can add other fields, but it's not even an option.
Are you able to show? I think I know where you're talking about, but can you show us?
Yeah, let me. Sorry, I'm pulling up a report. I'm going to get a contact of a report. And of course, lightning is an oxymoron. But, okay, so. Okay, so let me share the screen.
Right. So if you were to, can you open up Dev Console, please?
Mhm.
And copy the URL, copy the ID from the URL, please.
Okay.
Oh, even better. I didn't see that. Okay. Yeah. So open up Dev Console. And on Query Editor, type select created by ID
Is there underscore or just
space.
One big word.
So select space created by ID, all one word. From contact.
space or just
Space.
another
Yep. Space from space contact. Space where. Space ID equal.
word or sign?
Sign.
Yeah, equal sign, sorry. Apostrophe. Paste your ID in there. And then apostrophe. And then hit execute in the lower left. So the automated process does have a user ID there. Can you, and just make sure, so let's see what it looks like. Go back to the select to your query there. And after created by ID,
Okay.
put your cursor in there, comma, space, created by, period, name, all together. And then re-execute. Okay, so that is rendering that. So you do have a user ID that you can potentially leverage if you can't update created by, unfortunately. You can't update last modified by. Those are super protected by Salesforce. However, you can update the owner if automated process is ever placed as the owner.
No, this is great. Thank you, Doug. This is really great because in the flow, they're asking for the created by ID. So I'm able to create the flow where any contact that is, because the contacts really, the omni-channel isn't searching and finding the account. So I need to kind of create this one account, just kind of an orphan account and then somebody in the cleanup will clean them up later. But thank you, because I would like to still switch it out to something that I can control a little bit more. I know people have done it, but thank you. This is great.
Mm-hmm. And of course, be mindful of order of execution, just in case, since that's coming from, the outside coming in, it would seem logical that you could execute a flow off of that, but who knows? Salesforce is funny.
Yeah, my gut would be, Dale, I like where your head's at. My gut would be this would be an after save just to ensure that it all resolves, but then that has its own limitations. So that makes sense.
Okay, thanks, guys.
You bet. Todd, that leaves you.
All right. I have a question regarding the new dynamic related lists.
Okay.
The request has been to be able to put 2 of those on the account to be able to filter the contacts by end date. In other words, an active and inactive related list. I can't find any way to get to that end date because it lives on the account contact object. It's not on account and it's not on contact. It's on that table in between and I can't get to it. Am I missing something?
So yes and no. So I guess my first question would be I haven't played with it yet, but do you have access to the account relationship table? You could do a related list of that rather than the contacts themselves and get effectively the same list.
I'm looking at something real quick.
So without having an org in front of me, if you have contacts to multiple accounts enabled.
We do.
No, sorry, I'm thinking through my question here.
Okay.
Are you given, like on page layout, whether in classic or in, well, I guess it has to be classic, but are you given the ability to show the original contact related list in addition to account contact relationship, or is it one or the other? You
can do both.
You can? Okay.
Yeah. It's just usually it's confusing to have a list that's shorter than the other and nobody knows why, but yeah, you can do that. Because the contact list only shows the ones that are defined as direct. So
right. And so that's what I was wondering, is if you could only do where direct, or could only do account contact relationship. Is that what's potentially dictating the inability to do anything with dynamic? Or keep in mind, is it also so new that it's just not there yet?
Well, that's what I was wondering, if it's just not there. Because the start and end date
forms, you still don't have standard objects there.
True.
And start and end, those supposed to be custom for you on that relationship?
No, they're not. Nope, they are standard.
Really? That's a new one for me.
What is?
It's on the account contact relationship object. Start and end dates. There's also an is active flag out there also.
That one doesn't surprise me, but I didn't.
But I can't seem to get to any of those fields right now through the dynamic related list.
I don't know that you can set the start and end date. I think it's kind of like the created by and last modified. I think end probably.
Oh, they're editable.
They are? Okay.
I believe so. And I know active is. I can edit them as an admin anyway. I haven't tried it as a user, but active is there.
Active, yes, but the date fields though.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
Because what they're wanting to do is, I'm sure they can edit them, because what they're wanting to do is, as our yearbook advisors change, so we may know about that change for the following year before the current year is over. So advisor A may run August 1 of 2022 through May of 23. And then the new one may come in April of 23 through June of 24, and they want to be able to basically swap them in and out as we go along, so they know who's active and who's not.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge, Todd, is 100% going to be, it's not a contact related list, so that's your starting point. Have you been able to connect to the relationship table as a build a related list, advanced related list?
Haven't tried, to be honest. Hadn't thought about attacking it that way.
Yeah, I mean, you'll have to, because the only place that data exists is on that relationship. If you try to roll it up anywhere, there's multiple child records to the contact of the account. He doesn't know which one. So you have to be there.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. It's one of those things where I'm not on Twitter as much, because people are probably whining and complaining that Salesforce hasn't solved all the world's problems in one fell swoop. There's a reason why it's not available yet. They're trying to figure it out because it's more complex than it seems.
Okay, well, that gives me a clue. I'll try to roll in that different object and see if that works.
It's the field on Dale's contact that says favorite child. I don't know how to populate that field because I have many children. How do I populate favorite child on my contact page? Impossible.
I was an only child and my box was false.
That too.
Let me see.
I want to try to see if I can do it before we're off the call here.
Yeah, account contact is not an option.
I'm going to guess it's going to be I'm going to guess like account team, opportunity, role, like those.
Account team is there.
Really?
That's what I'm seeing.
Wow. Okay.
But account
I would have figured those more second class objects would come later on, if at all, but.
Those must have been easier to do.
Huh.
All right. Well, I appreciate the information. I'll keep digging around and see what I can learn. And if I learn anything good, I'll come back to this group. So thank you.
I've really want to know something, so I'm making everybody listen to me breathe and type.
Enter the rabbit hole.
I'm just curious what the current list of supported objects is and where it's listed. It's not there. Riveting audio right now. Yeah, I'm not able to find it. I'm sorry. All right. We'll come back to that. The list of supported objects should be readily available. I'm just not finding it because the pressure's on. So we'll come back to it, Todd. I'll post if I can find it so you can have that for your reference. I didn't see any more hands or questions come up. Anyone? Stuart, any new fires you put out this week that you want to talk about? Bueller?
Wish I could say there's something exciting.
I have a fun just side note. I'm in the DevOps beta for Salesforce, and it's really, really cool. I can't wait for it to go GA. And about 2 weeks ago, out of the blue, it just stopped functioning in our org, but only in production. It works in any replicated sandbox. The instance itself isn't having issues, like nobody else is having it, but we just all of a sudden it just starts throwing an Aura error, and I've gotten the entire DevOps team stumped. Like every one of them that jumps on says, "Oh, I don't know what that is." I'm like, "Well, thanks. What are we gonna do about it?" And then silence. So it's been a fun week or 3. So
I guess I've been so buried in my client work and everything, but what is the DevOps tool that they're?
Yeah. So it's really cool. So what it allows you to do is through a declarative interface, you can connect all of your development orgs for your normal deployments from all the way down to an individual, say, admin dev sandbox. Once you've enabled change tracking, you can then say, Dale has a change, click a button, it picks up all the changes in your box, compares it to the pipeline, and effectively builds the change set, and then checks to see if you want to do a check-in. So it kind of is like the best of both worlds of not having to do a change set, but having the declarative feel of a change set connected to a standard CI/CD pipeline. And then you can do multiple merges, and then you can do standard pulls and pull requests and approvals, and you can use work items. So like it's really turning it into, rather than having to use Jira or Rally or Azure DevOps or whatever, there's going to be a tool in platform that can allow admins to kind of look and act and work like a software development company versus kind of that weird change that never felt quite right. So it's really cool. Really, really cool. Especially because the change tracking and the compare and merge features allows you to really treat it like branch-based changes, so you can see what's going on at any time and deploy what you want to deploy. It's pretty cool.
Gotcha. If you were to compare it to like Git, Capado, Gearset, any of those, where would you rank it so far?
So it's the roadmap is a Capado Gearset type feature functionality. It's in beta, so right now we're kind of in like Capado Lite. But I think once it goes GA, the roadmap is there's going to be a lot of kind of a merging experience where you're going to see a lot of similarities, and then I'm sure they'll add on to that. And then because it's all built on the platform, then you can do other things like start to leverage the work items as a rally board and things like, or I mean, as a Kanban board or whatever. You can really start to turn it into, let Salesforce manage everything for you, from the work queue to the deployments to the check-ins to everything. So yeah.
So interesting. Does anywhere in the next, not going to hold you to this, even though it's being recorded and will be posted on the internet later for, forever and ever. Any point in the future where VS Code starts to maybe not be the source of the actual development because Salesforce is just kind of swallowing a lot of that back up?
I'm not seeing anything, but the kind of the commingling of SFDX and DevOps and Code Builder, it feels like more and more it's going to start to pull together and have this unified experience. I don't think it'll ever be one and the same, just so that because so many developers are really focused on their personal decisions for IDEs and things like that. I don't think they'd ever force, like, Lightning component development to be in platform, kind of like how Apex way back in the day used to be, did it in dev console because it was easiest. I don't see them doing that, but who knows? The roadmap is interesting.
Yeah, I don't foresee Salesforce forcing anybody into all flows when workflow rules and process builders can do their thing. But I guess anything's possible.
If you subscribe to the developer podcast that Josh Burke hosts, the last couple guests he's had are using Code Builder and are developing their apps fully on Code Builder. And from the lint in their voice, if that's a term, lint in their voice, it sounds like they are very successful. I'm not hearing any frustration. I'm hearing a lot of curiosity and success and excitement about the future of Code Builder. Yeah. I haven't had a chance to touch Code Builder, but just by the fact that people are using it and are like, this has potential, makes me think, I'm not ready to move out of VS Code myself, but I'd be willing to try it.
I mean, have you done a demo of it yet?
No.
It's VS Code.
Interesting.
It's just a web browser version of VS Code in every way, shape, and form.
Every way, shape, including metadata. So because that's the piece that, as a business analyst, striving business architect, will probably never grow up to be the touch all the things that I want to be, including developer. I love me some metadata. But to know how to get VS Code installed and the Salesforce extensions and to have that in something that's web-based without losing, let's say, Workbench, to be able to get all of that sounds pretty amazing.
Yeah.
To do your own select statements and code scans and set up metadata scans. Oh, yeah, that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that I haven't seen, but I assume it's got to be there, is that all of my interactions with VS Code have been using SFDX, which uses that metadata 2 packaging model, which isn't the metadata that we all grew up and loved. It's basically the same, but it's slightly different. And so it'd be great to be able to pull metadata in either format, just to kind of, even though you couldn't develop, you could actually do that assessment like Stu was just talking about. So
Dale mentioned that he is a longtime Salesforce BA, and I'm just gonna throw this out there, even if I get in trouble because it's recorded. The Salesforce business analyst exam, is moving right along. It is. I'm on the review team. I can announce that now because the exam was announced at TDX, and it's in its final pieces and technical review, and just got invited to a trailhead piece, or we'll be creating some prepare for your Salesforce BA credential content. So that is underway. So I know I've just been reading on, I don't read social media much anymore, but reading on the community, the so-called Salesforce BA test. It's not so-called. It's happening. It's coming. By the end of the year, you'll be able to register for a Salesforce BA exam, and it's good. I say that it's good. Yeah, it is. It actually has content in it, and so I'm impressed in what they built, and so we'll see how that goes.
Cool.
Very cool.
I've heard some really good reviews of the strategy designer too, so it's nice to see two brand new certs with positive feedback. So
strategy designer was very cool. I'm totally impressed with that exam.
So knowing what you know, and if you can't share, totally fine, but any admins that are either watching this, like that are on this now or might watch the recording later, I feel after like 5-6 years of being a consulting business analyst that there is a ton of overlap with skills admins should be empowered to have for their companies. How much of the admin skill set do you think is applicable to the BA exam? And I'm not talking technical skill set. I'm talking like the requirements gathering, the understanding the process, the like all of those things.
Yeah. So, and here's something that we debated over and over, and the advisors, out in the field advisors recommended that the Salesforce admin credential be required, because, and I know this is a kind of a roundabout to answer your question, because the difference of just, you can go out and get a BA certification from a dozen different places and be a certified BA. But the difference is that a Salesforce, certified Salesforce BA has that Salesforce core knowledge, and also domain knowledge about requirements gathering, lifecycle management, like things about how to communicate and deal with customer, and be that thought leader to take them through the journey of putting together a product. Not at the architect level, but at the BA level. And so we recommended that when this is presented, to please have the admin credential required before you would take the BA exam. And we'll see if that is something that they put as part of the exam or not.
It's interesting. I could definitely argue that side of it. I could also argue the other side of it, that there is so much that I've learned in my time as a BA that I wish I'd known before I became an admin, as a solo admin. And maybe that's what separates a little bit, is as a solo admin and you're wearing all the hats. But I wish I knew so much more back then that I know now to be a more well-rounded at what I was doing. But very cool. I mean, that's awesome that Salesforce is finally putting out a BA cert, and that there is going to be a decent amount of overlap in that space, because there really is. There really is. So good.
Yeah.
I'm curious, and again, you might not be able to answer. Is there any PM stuff in there as well, or is it very BA?
It's pretty BA.
Okay, cool.
And when we did the research on it, there actually is a ton of BA content in Trailhead and in the Salesforce training and online and through the Salesforce videos and stuff like that. There is a lot of information that is BA relevant that we went through. Being on a credential team is quite the experience. You get work out there to see, what does Salesforce actually build and what does the Trailhead team do. They do a ton of stuff. They are hard workers.
Mm-hmm.
They build content like crazy.
Oh,
It
yeah.
is impressive.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
did one super badge and that was enough for me. I couldn't give them enough time to help with any more of it. And that was just a super badge, less a whole certification. I can't imagine.
Right.
Yeah. So, well, I'm excited. Yep. The designer exams are amazing. I have watched them from kind of the outside looking in as how they're creating those, and wow, there's a ton of stuff in there. It's great.
Nice. Very cool.
All right, we're at time. I'm sure everyone has 2 o'clock. So should we slap virtual high fives and call it a day, everybody?
Oh.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Hope you have a good weekend. It's nice to see you all. And we'll see you on the 24th.
Sounds good. Take care, everyone.
Bye.